The marble countertop shimmered under soft pendant lights, its white surface speckled with crumbs from an untouched charcuterie board. Camille moved in silence, wiping gently, almost reverently. She had done this for 11 years, 4 nights. A week, sometimes more during holidays. The house always smelled like vanilla candles and expensive wine. Tonight, it smelled like something else. Dismisseled, she reached for the last wine glass when porcelain shattered behind her. A salad plate, deliberately tossed, spun on the tile before breaking in two. Brielle 20, bored and back from college, murked without looking up from her phone. "I'm not a maid. Clean it yourself," she said lazily, scrolling. Camille didn't respond. Her hand hovered over the sponge, then slowly pressed down. Her fingers trembled. Not from fear. From memory, she remembered the first time Brielle called her the help, giggling to a friend at age 10. She remembered Mrs. Caldwell gently correcting her, only to later say, "You know how kids are." Camille had smiled then, just like she was smiling now, except back then the smile hadn't cracked at the corners. Camille turned slightly, enough to catch her warped reflection in the stainless steel fridge. She looked tired, but not broken. She gathered the shards of the plate. Without a word, a small cut bloomed on her index finger. She didn't flinch. Brielle sighed. "Ugh. You don't have to be dramatic." Camille looked up. Her voice caught in her throat, but didn't escape. Instead, she nodded once, turned back to the sink, and rinsed the blood away. The sponge turned pink dot outside. The sound of sprinklers hissed to life. Inside, the silence grew heavy, like unspoken history hanging above the chandelier. Camille dried her hands. One tear threatened her lower lid, but didn't fall. Not yet. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Camille closed the pantry door behind her and let the darkness press in. The light switch was inches away, but she didn't reach for it. The quiet hummed in her ears, like a lullaby from a past she hadn't meant to revisit. She sat down slowly on an overturned crate of bottled water, her back brushing against the canned goods and paper towels. It was cold in there, not from the temperature but from memory. She saw herself 12 years ago, standing in this same house in a pressed blouse and sensible shoes. Back then, her resume had been clutched tightly in her hand, bachelor's degree, 2 decades of caregiving, culinary certifications, but none of that had mattered. "Oh, we just love your energy," Mrs. Caldwell had said, smiling too wide. "You feel so safe, safe." Camille had smiled back, unsure what exactly she was being hired for. Was it her resume, or the reassurance of her blackness without threat? She blinked in the dark, the pantry's air stale and still. "You're such a hard worker, so polite. Your smile lights up a room." She could still hear those words like applause after a performance, praise. That felt like permission. Until tonight, when it turned into dismissal. From the other side of the wall, Brielle's laughter echoed faintly through the kitchen. Camille pressed her hands against her knees, grounding herself. The floor beneath her didn't shake, but something inside her did. She wasn't angry yet. She was remembering. Asterisk, 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 the next morning. Camille arrived early, before anyone else was awake. The kitchen was still and dim, lit only by the faint blue of the rising sun. She placed her bag under the sink cabinet, but not before slipping her phone into her apron. Recording app armed and ready. No more pretending. She started taking notes of snide remarks, passive-aggressive corrections, moments they lowered their voices just enough to sound innocent, but not enough to erase the intent. At night, she wrote in a journal tucked between cleaning supply bottles, a quiet archive of humiliation. But this time, it had purpose. "You're done folding yourself to fit, Camille." That voice rang in her ear from the night before. Denise had said it over tea at Camille's small apartment, her first real home. One she never invited the Caldwells to see. Denise used to work for a different family in the same neighborhood. Now she led workshops on labor rights for domestic workers. She wore head wraps in bold colors and spoke like someone who had forgotten how to shrink. "They want gratitude for crumbs," Denise had said, "but you got recipes in your blood, baby. You made the whole damn meal." Camille had smiled then. A small one, the kind you give when someone sees the bruise you forgot to hide. Back at the Caldwell house, Camille adjusted the cushions on the sofa, listening. Brielle was upstairs, on the phone, calling someone ghetto for wearing braids to a party. Camille pressed save on the recording. She walked into the hallway, mirror, and looked at herself. Not the uniform, not the quiet shadow they relied on, but the woman gathering proof, gathering voice. They still thought she was a sponge, soaking everything up in silence. But they didn't know. She was done being wrung out. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Camille opened the laundry room door, but didn't step inside. The pile of clothes on the floor stared back at her. Bright whites, faded jeans, laced underwear mixed in with socks that had never been turned right side out. For 12 years, she'd handled them all like a ritual, folding every shirt as if respect could be stitched into cotton. Not today. She turned off the light and walked away. That morning, she skipped her usual routine. She didn't refill the expensive soap dispensers, didn't fluff the throw pillows 3 times clockwise, didn't polish the antique clock that no one ever looked at but still expected to shine. Instead, she wiped only the surfaces that mattered for sanitation, not presentation. Hours passed. No one noticed till they did. By mid-afternoon, Mrs. Caldwell appeared in the kitchen, brows raised in practiced concern. "Camille, the laundry." Camille didn't raise her voice. She didn't blink. "I'm not your maid," she said. Her hands calm, her gaze unmoving. It was the same sentence Brielle had thrown at her. But this time, it wasn't petty or cruel. It was a truth delivered like a clean slice through air. Brielle, walking in behind her mother, froze. The words hit her like an echo she hadn't expected to return. A long pause. "Oh, Mrs. Caldwell," murmured. "Well, we assumed." Camille smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Exactly, the air in the house changed that day. Not loud, not angry, just different. Like a storm gathering where everyone hoped for sunshine. Later, Camille walked past the laundry room again. The clothes were still there unfolded, untouched. She felt no guilt. Sometimes dignity starts with the simplest rebellion, letting dirty laundry stay exactly where it belongs. Asterisk, asterisk. The call came the next morning. Camille had just placed her coat on the hook when Mrs. Caldwell stepped into the foyer, face tight with concern but painted in polite restraint. "Camille," she said softly, "can we talk?" Privately, they sat in the guest room, always immaculate, rarely used. The matriarch closed the door and folded her hands in her lap like she was praying. "We've never treated you like help. You're family to us." Camille didn't flinch. "I cleaned the baseboards during my lunch breaks." Mrs. Caldwell blinked. "I missed my son's high school graduation to stay late and set tables for your dinner party." A pause. No paid time off. No health care. Not even a signed birthday card in 12 years. Mrs. Caldwell opened her mouth, then closed it. Camille's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You said I was family, but I was never invited to the table, only to clear it. The words hung heavy in the soft room, surrounded by framed paintings of places Mrs. Caldwell had traveled, but never once asked Camille about. Mrs. Caldwell whispered, "But you never said anything before." Camille looked directly at her, voice steady as a drumbeat. Respect isn't silence, it's recognition. Outside, the wind tapped against the window, a sound that had been ignored for years. Now unavoidable, Mrs. Caldwell stood up slowly, like someone just realizing they had been sitting in someone else's story. Camille remained seated, not out of subservience, but because, for once, she didn't have to rise to be seen. And when she finally walked out of that room, she wasn't waiting for permission. Camille placed the envelope on the kitchen counter, her resignation letter. No dramatics, no emotion on paper, just a quiet declaration that this part of her life was over. She didn't wait for a response. She knew they'd find it after their brunch, maybe after the next careless coffee ring stained the marble. Upstairs, the house stirred with the sounds of another weekend. Phones buzzing, light laughter, and footsteps that had never once paused to ask how she was doing. Camille reached for her coat. 12 years of wiping counters while biting her tongue, of birthdays missed, sore feet ignored, and names forgotten by those she served every day. But no more. She stepped into the winter air, exhaled, and smiled not. The rehearsed smile she wore like armor, but one that rose from her chest like sunlight through cracked windows. At home, Denise sat waiting with 2 cups of tea and a small folder filled with business license forms. "You sure about this?" she asked, one brow raised like always. Camille nodded. "I'm not starting over. I'm starting correctly." The name of the company was already printed on the first page. Digniclean domestic work, ethical pay, protections, training, no silence, no second-class treatment, just pride in a job done well, without shame. Denise slid her half of the investment across the table. "Let's clean up the whole damn industry." That evening, Camille posted the launch on a local Facebook group. Comments poured in. Other workers, tired of being treated like shadows. A few housewives surprised, some supportive, some defensive. By Monday, she had 3 bookings, a logo, and more fire in her bones than ever before. And when Mrs. Caldwell finally texted, "You didn't even say goodbye," Camille didn't reply, because she already had, in the form of folded dignity, handwritten truth, and a company born from years of buried voice, finally spoken aloud. The stage wasn't grand, just a small wooden platform in the community center's multi-purpose room, surrounded by folding chairs and chipped walls. But for Camille, it felt like a summit. Months had passed since she walked out of the Caldwell house, since she chose herself. Now, seated before her were domestic workers, advocates, local organizers, even to reporters. A banner overhead read, "Voices of Labor, Dignity in the Invisible." Camille adjusted the microphone, hands steady. "I spent over a decade wiping someone else's countertops while mine gathered dust," she began. "I missed milestones. I swallowed insults I can still taste. And I smiled because I thought, that's what survival looked like." She told them about the marble kitchen, the laughter that never included her, the birthdays she scrubbed through, the unpaid hours she was told were part of being part of the family. She paused. Let the silence speak. Then came the question from the back row. A young woman in a green head wrap. When she said that to you, the daughter, what did you say back? Camille smiled. The real kind. I looked at her and said, if I'm not a maid, then why did you ever treat me like one? The room held its breath. Then, like thunder after lightning, applause erupted, slow at first, then rising into a standing ovation. Some clapped with tears in their eyes, others with clenched fists, and Camille, she just nodded, letting the weight of the moment settle where silence used to live. Afterward, a teenage girl approached her, notebook in hand. I want to do what you did, she said, not cleaning but choosing me. Camille bent slightly, looked her in the eyes. Then start now, start loud, start true. Outside, the sky was lavender with dusk. Camille stepped off the stage and into the hallway, where a small stack of dignified brochures waited by the exit. One woman picked one up, then another. The house she had left behind no longer owned her story. This one did. And as she walked out into the chill, coat buttoned, shoulders back, Camille didn't feel like someone who cleaned homes. She felt like someone who changed them.